Hello there. Welcome to SJ Global. I am Minister Jackson, and today we are dealing again with the topic of church, community, and social justice. Our subtitle today is From Obedience to Position. Again, church, community, and social justice from obedience to position. The text we're going to reference today is Genesis chapters 39 through 41. And again, Genesis 39 through 41. May read from the Message translation and also the New American Standard Translation, but just know that regardless of the translation, we're going to get to the same place in our Bible, and I will be paraphrasing some. So let's get into this word. I've already prayed, and I am ready to travel with you through the scriptures. So starting at chapter 39, it starts speaking in reference to Joseph serving at Potiphar's house. God had blessed whatever Joseph touched, and Potiphar had put Joseph in charge of all of his affairs. I'll summarize this for you. Due to the lies from Potiphar's wife, Joseph was thrown in jail. And when you go down to verses 21, you go into where it says, but the Lord still was with Joseph, even while he was in prison. God was still kind to Joseph. God still gave Joseph favor, even while he was locked up. So much so that Joseph was placed in charge of the prisoners, and he was able to manage the day-to-day operations of the jail, even while being a prisoner himself. And then when we scroll down to verses 23, it goes on to state that whatever Joseph did, God made sure that it worked out for the best. It worked out for his good. Whatever he did worked out for his good. And that is often a prayer that we have, that God, let this work out for our good. So when we're scrolling down and we're going down into Genesis chapter 41, you get into the reference of it saying that Pharaoh had dreams that he could not interpret. He was looking for an interpreter. And Pharaoh sought out people to interpret his dreams. He sought out magicians, and he sought out different, what he considered wise men in the earth to interpret his dreams. But no one he sought out, no person that he thought was wise, no magician, no one who idly worship a lowercase g God, as someone referenced today, another God. No one could actually interpret Pharaoh's dreams. But Pharaoh sought everyone, but he never sought God. He never sought the King of Kings. He never sought God for his vision. But again, throughout the land, he was looking for an interpreter. So Pharaoh's cupbearer had an epiphany and remember that, hey, I was in prison with a gentleman named Joseph, and I shared my dream with him, and Joseph interpreted it, and it was very accurate. He told me exactly what was going to happen, exactly what was going to take place with me and another prisoner. And it actually occurred. So the cupbearer started sharing Joseph's abilities with Pharaoh. And then Pharaoh went and called for Joseph to come out of prison and interpret his dream. So he asked Joseph to give him understanding of his dreams. So I love this because when we get down to, we're still in 41, chapter 41, when you get down to verses 14, it starts saying that he sent for Pharaoh. Then you go down to verses 16, and then it starts saying that when Pharaoh asked Joseph to interpret his dream, Joseph answered and said, "Not I, but God. God will set Pharaoh's mind at ease. Not me and my own ability. What I have done in the past is not myself, but everything I do, everything I speak is God Himself speaking and God Himself using me." So again, Joseph told Pharaoh his dream, and as we read, it states that Joseph shared with Pharaoh that the interpretation of his dreams is that there will be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine approaching. And Joseph instructed Pharaoh that he needed to get someone that is wise and someone that is experienced and put him in charge. He told him that he needs to appoint leaders throughout the land to organize what's in the storehouse. Appoint people to organize what is in the storehouse, to save up enough so that people can eat in a famine. Save up enough so that people can eat even in their lack, even in their distress, even in their personal famines. And I'm reminded when I think of that, it reminds me of this what my husband shared with me in reference to growing up with his dad, and his dad being coming from a place of not enough, with his dad's mom just barely having enough food for survival and going without substantial food for different periods of time in his childhood. That when he grew up and became a man, one of his promises that he made to himself is that he would never go hungry. So he worked hard as he can, and when he began to have a family, he worked even harder to ensure that his family, his children, would never beg for bread, that they would never go hungry. And he always organized what was and analyzed what was in their storehouse to make sure that people had enough to eat, that even if famine or distress came in the world, that they would not be without. Oftentimes my husband reminds me that he remembered times when, even though it may seem like they didn't have everything, they had enough. They had enough to give to someone else. He remembered times where his parents would allow strangers to come in and eat dinner. That times where it'll be people that just was on the corners or so forth up in New York, and they have them come in just for a meal, just for a quick bite, or they'll take them food or so forth. But they wanted to make sure that what they had, no one else around them would go hungry, that everyone else around them could survive the famine, could survive their personal lack, their personal situations. And that is what I'm reminded of in reference to this portion, this principle with Joseph. He wanted to make sure that the country would not be completely devastated by the famine. So Pharaoh and his people agreed and acknowledged that what Joseph said was actually smart, and that Joseph was equipped enough to speak into their life to give them order and direction. So when you coming down into Genesis 41, you're getting into verses 38 and 39, and I'm sharing this in case you want to go back on your own time and read. But 38 and 39 is starting out. I love what it states. I love what it states. And I'll read this from the Message translation. It states as, then Pharaoh said to his officials, isn't this the man we need? Are we going to find anyone else who has God's spirit in him like this? Are we going to find anyone else that has God's spirit in him like this? They go on to state that you are the man. So Pharaoh told Joseph, you are the man for us. God has given you the inside story, and no one is as qualified as you in experience and wisdom. I love that. I love that. And then when you go on down, it states that Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of Egypt. So oh my goodness, I love that. Joseph was released from prison, but he was given a position of authority. He was released from the thing that held him bound, but he was given a position of authority. His job was to manage the upcoming situations that the people were going to encounter. His job was to provide direction and insight and share wisdom. The people were living well as they knew, but they didn't know what was on the horizon. They did not know what was coming, neither were they prepared for what may come on the horizon. But they were going to encounter a personal recession, a community recession. They were going to encounter lack, drought, famine. They were going to encounter joblessness. They were going to encounter depression and hopelessness. They were going to encounter worry and stress. And some would not survive without an intervention. Joseph's freedom came due to his openness to be used by God. Joseph was no longer bound because of his openness to be used by God. His obedience to speak the truth set him free. His ability to view situations how God viewed them gave him favor in different places and circumstances. God was able to use Joseph and place him in strategic places to manage strategic issues because Joseph had learned skills. And Joseph was in tune with what was occurring around him. Joseph understood government. He understood the distribution of human services. He understood food distribution. He understood contract law and the financial systems of his day. He understood payroll and he understood the trade that was going on in the area. Joseph understood how to manage money and people. He had experiences beyond, way beyond just prayer and worship. And yes, let me be clear that prayer, preaching, ministry, worshiping are an absolute must for a believer, any believer, absolute must. Yes, but yet there is so much more needed to change circumstances, to so much needed to review governing systems, so much needed to manage wealth. It takes more than just being able to make money. It takes more than just being able to count your money, being able to make a personal budget. It takes more than being able to open up your bank app to see what your balance is. It takes more than that to be able to manage, to be able to grow and sustain generational wealth. Now, believe it, I'm talking about wealth that surpasses your children's lifespan. It takes knowledge and experience to make, sustain, and grow generational wealth. It takes the obedience to stand up for God, the obedience to be bold, and the obedience to move in the seasons that you are graced to move in to sustain generational wealth for that surpasses your children's lifespan. You have to get people around you who are experienced in certain areas where you are unlearned, certain areas that you are not particularly exposed to. That's how iron sharpens iron. Each one teach one. You know, you get people around you that can instill things in you as well as you can instill things in them. You get people around you that can pray for you as well as you can pray for them, that can provide you wisdom and insight as well as you can do the same. The kingdom of God is in desperate need for more people who would be so willing to share their experiences and wisdom in this earth. We are spirit beings in a earthly body, living in this earth until we meet him face to face. It is imperative that we are not ignorant to the world systems, imperative that we are not ignorant to the world systems, and that we as believers gain favor and oversight in this earth. So God's kingdom can truly come and his will can truly be done in earth as it is in heaven. God's will cannot be done if his children are unlearned. God's will cannot be done if his children are unwise. God's will cannot be done if his children do not get themselves in positions of authority outside of the four walls of the church. There are local cities and local police precincts that very much so welcome and would be glad to partner with ministries to engage with the communities. I have witnessed, and you may have too, I have witnessed police departments call local pastors before they raid someone's home. They will call local pastors before they go into these neighborhoods. They will call local pastors to obtain assistance from the pastors to de-escalate certain situations. I have witnessed judges release people from court, release them from jail, prison, if they're released to a local pastor. You know, there are systems that welcome the help of the church for civil governing and oversight. The church has to get into a position of authority within the communities that it states it serves. There's a wonderful local organization that goes to strip clubs in the local cities on the weekends, and they give the strippers little token bags with necessities and scriptures in them. They show them kindness and love, and they let them know that God loves them despite anything, despite it all. God is still a redeemer. God is still a provider, and he is ready and waiting. That, my brother and sister, is when restoration occurs. As Christians, we should position ourselves to be available for his use. Joseph was wrongfully imprisoned, but God gave him favor everywhere he went. You can even ask, well, why God didn't stop him from going to prison, unfairly. But God knew that he needed Joseph to be in a particular place. Everything Joseph did, God showed himself all around Joseph. To every person that was around him, God showed out. God showed himself, from the prisoners to the gods. Everyone was able to have a moment with God through Joseph. Joseph was positioned to display God's favor everywhere, and God made room for Joseph's gifts. God made room for Joseph's skills everywhere he went, because he knew that Joseph would use what he knew to help save other people. Everywhere he went, he was about his father's business. Was he perfect? Was Joseph perfect? No. Nope. Joseph was not perfect. Did he do things wrong? Yes. Joseph did wrong things. He was not perfect. But this principle of managing community, this principle of being available for God's use, this principle about being bold in your salvation, this principle about being knowledgeable to systems and operations, knowing when to store things up, knowing when to distribute, this principle is priceless and desperately needed. Joseph's success was due to him being able to use his God-given gifts and his desire to learn, his ability to be teachable, to learn new information. He wanted to know how the systems work. If we continue to settle and allow unbelievers to majority manage our local government, our state government, and our federal government systems, then we as believers will have no position of authority outside of the four walls of the church. And some people may believe that that's just enough, that I'm just, meant to just have authority within this body, in this church, but yet we are not all called to be pastors. We are not all called to be ministry leaders. So we all can't just have all of our authority inside the four walls of the church. We have to look at communities, look at laws, look at educational systems, look at the statistics in poverty, look at the number of people leaving the church, look at the suicide rates that are creeping up so high in children and teenagers. Look at homosexuality. Look at depression, the state of the families. Look at the statistics for single parent households. And you can look at all of those things and see that the church has so much opportunity to make an impact for God's kingdom. The church can position itself for authority in this earth so that others can see the kingdom come and that they can see his will being done on earth. And obedience provides the release for this ministry. Obedience provides the release for this ministry. Obedience provides the release into the position that God has for you. The church must position itself and manage seasons, manage these issues by bringing the power of God into the circumstances, so that whatever you touch, God will be present and he will give you favor in the land. I love this, and I'll bring this to a close, I would say. But I love this because when you go down into verses 38 again, it states, Are we going to find anyone else? Are we going to find anyone else who has God's spirit in him like this? And I ask you, my friends, will you be found to have God's spirit like that? Would you be found embracing the principle of Joseph, equipping yourself for the work of the kingdom, being powerful in spirit, being powerful in prayer, being powerful in word, and powerful in knowledge of the affairs of this world and the communities? Christians often want to disconnect themselves from the world, but we are spirits be living in this vessel, in this life, in this world, and we can no longer be ignorant to its devices. How else do we know what exactly to pray for? So, are we going to find anyone else who has God's spirit in him like this? I pray that we can be found to have the tenacity, to have the boldness and the drive to be used by God to manage the issues, to manage the state of the world, to manage the affairs, to allow ourselves to be used, to be a vessel in this earth so God's kingdom can come and that his will can be done in this earth. So we can be found equipped, experienced, doing the work, and moving in God's authority. This has been Church, Community, and Social Justice with Minister Jackson. Reach out to us at sjglobal.me if you would like to partner with us to connect the church back to the community. Until next time, be experienced and be wise. Enjoy yourselves.